Good afternoon once again, people of St. Maarten, MPs, Minister of TIAT. We had adjourned for a few minutes because of technical difficulties. Before then, MP Westcott Williams was in the middle of addressing a few questions to the Minister, and I will now allow MP Westcott Williams to continue with her questions posed to the Minister. MP Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and I had done my courtesies in terms of greeting everyone and, of course, thanking the Minister for her presentation. And I also made use of the opportunity to indicate how important this topic is, not only for us as a political party that ran on this platform, but also made sure that it was included in the governing accord and the governing program. And thus, I'm very grateful to the Minister for what she has presented in terms of what she has been doing thus far under this topic. And my question started asking about the budget 2025. Budget 2025 and the very meager amount in the budget, what that can do or what that will be for in 2025, and if the Minister has a projection for projects in the context of agriculture, livestock, and fisheries for 2026, and if so, what are they? I also ask if we have learned of any challenges faced by previous attempts to import regional produce, agricultural produce, especially from different countries here in the region. We know some years ago there was a project going on with imports from the Dominican Republic, and they were being sold at very good prices here to the general population. So have we learned anything, the reason why this was stopped? Were there challenges that these persons confronted? I also ask if any renewed and additional attention would be paid to price control, given the issue of the tariffs and all that comes with that. And then the matter of the cooperation agreement signed between the 6 Dutch territories. And where does that fit? Where does that cooperation fit in the context of all of the different projects and steps to be taken? There was also a study done at the time that outlined the challenges faced by local agriculture, local farmers, and those who practice agriculture on St. Maarten. So is there anything from that cooperation agreement with the other Dutch Antilles and any steps based on the study that was done? And I had just started, this is where I think we had to check back what was the issue with what was the technical issue. And I was going to say through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister that I had noted here the issue of, not the issue, the sector of fishery. And then, but as the Minister continued in her presentation, I saw mention made of this area. And one of the things to happen is that the Fishery Committee will be reinstituted. And so I'll await to see what will be the outcome of this committee in terms of some of the challenges that the Minister has outlined that is faced in the fishing sector and how those can be addressed. Mr. Chairman, there is, and I think we'll be dealing with it shortly, a request has come to Parliament for members of this committee, members of Parliament, to be part of a mission to the Dominican Republic. From what we have understood, although we have not yet seen the official invitation that came from the Dutch embassy, we understood it was channeled from the Dutch embassy. But I would like to know, I don't want to ask it as bluntly as like, what is in it for St. Maarten? So when we look at agricultural promotion, of course, the networking and the contacts, those are important things. But what could we get out of that mission, specifically geared towards some of the issues that have been highlighted by the ministry as being pursued in the context of regional cooperation? I took note with interest as to how the ALF, ALF, agency will be set up. And the minister, Mr. Chairman, made mention of a ZBO structure for that agency. And I would like to have a further discussion with the minister on this choice of a legal entity for a more executing type of an agency, which I got that will be an important part of the agency. So I would just like to have a further elaboration from the minister about the choice of the form of the agency, the ALF agency, via a ZBO, which is usually by law and actually carries out a government task independently. But if I hear the many different things that is expected of the ALF, to my initial impression would be that then, in addition to the ZBO, you would need an agency. But that's just my initial thoughts on the matter of the legal structure of a ZBO for an agency, as mentioned by the minister, to carry out those tasks. But again, I would love to hear from the minister and or the ministry about the choice for a ZBO for that agency. And then through you, Mr. Chairman, has in all of this, the minister had any further discussions with her colleague or colleagues regarding the invasive species control? And if not, I ask of the minister and the ministry that this be given attention in the context of this ministry's plan for agriculture and the like. So if it's not yet part, I would ask of the minister that that be included in your plan and that it not only be left up to whatever other ministry is actually in charge of it. The matter of, this is another request, and I heard and learned of the actions being undertaken as far as the wells are concerned. And if the minister can give some further thought on the entire water harvesting management. With this, I mean, what can we do, generally speaking, with rainwater? And how can we try to harvest that water for further use? And again, if it's not part of the planning, if that can be, at least the matter can be looked at and taken up in the context of this plan. The matter of tax incentives for this sector in particular, if that too can be looked at and investigated, for the lack of a better word. And then, given all of what I've asked and some of the things that I have proposed, I would like to ask through you, Mr. Chairman, given the importance of this matter, not only for us here in Parliament and for the ministry, but for the public at large, if the minister can develop a sort of a reporting mechanism, keeping Parliament informed periodically of the progress in the many areas outlined for steps to be taken as we go along. So sort of a periodic ALF update. If that can be committed to this committee, that we will receive, because there's a lot there that appears which have started, which will start. And, you know, I guess you're going to have to, money-wise, resources-wise, and your priorities are going to have to be set. And I would like to see what those priorities are and how they are being pursued as we go along. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, again, my thanks to the minister, and I really look forward to seeing some of the actions carried out as are being contemplated at this time. And I thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams, for those questions posed to the minister. I now look to MP Francisco A. La Cruz, as he will now address the minister. MP La Cruz? Francisco, I said Francisco. MP La Cruz. My apologies.
Afternoon. A blessed afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman Dimar Labega. To the SG, the Honorable Minister and her support staff, which I will call out by name, Ms. Isaac, a pleasure to see you again. And Mr. Frederick, pleasure. and my fellow colleagues in Parliament, those watching and listening via all the social media streams. Mr. Chairman, I am extremely happy because agriculture was one of the things that we worked on hard while in the ministry, and hearing also the team of Parliament and that the minister is working extremely hard to make this a permanent plan in our culture, again in our culture on St. Maarten, is extremely satisfying to hear. I have a couple questions, a couple suggestions, and it's never good to speak after MP Westcott, because she takes up 3/4 of the questions, but either way, I will still state mine. So maybe SG could make a note of that and let her speak last. Mr. Chairman, through you to the minister, a budget of 61,000 for agriculture could easily be amended. You will definitely have the support from enough here in Parliament to get that done. So you could have that discussion with the DP, and definitely this side we will have it done. Because I know 61,000 can't cover absolutely nothing. Just the school program alone takes up more than that. So I'm somewhat scared, because what I'm hearing now with a 61,000, that means that there might not even be the school program. And that is very alarming. Then, Madam Chairlady, Mr. Chairman, I remember while in TIAD we had discussions concerning collaborations between the DR, St. Maarten, Anguilla, St. Kitts, Saba, and Statia. I did not hear Saba and Statia mentioned, while they are St. Maarten. So if we could go back and look at that, that was definitely an idea. And I even got help from the farmer on Saba and his husband, Gerard de Jong, to make the request at the Groei Funds for the 7 million for agriculture. So that definitely would be something that I'd like the minister to look into. And one of the ideas was not only when we speak of agriculture products, but what caused the price to be that high is the shipping. So if any discussions could be held when it comes to shipping, and the idea then was, if on St. Maarten we have lettuce, that we make sure that all our lettuce are sold either on St. Maarten or shipped to the nearby islands, sold to those islands, which would mean that our farmers here would have more monies to be able to produce either more or produce other crops. And whichever crops are not sold or not grown on St. Maarten would then come from other places. We got a list then from St. Kitts with a lot of agriculture products that they had in access, a lot which were cheaper. I saw that the minister, I think sometime last year, met with the Minister of Agriculture in St. Kitts, Samuel Duggins, and I think he also provided that list to the minister. So maybe getting in touch with Saba and Statia and Anguilla, we'll be able to achieve a lot more than what we're trying right now. Then during Par Latino, and I'm going to bust the pot a little, my colleague MP Duran won't be happy, but I need to mention it now. We plan to start working on a law that looks into what we're eating. So chemicals, for example, that are used on agriculture and foods that are allowed in the US, but actually not allowed in the EU. I've seen, I haven't heard anything about that, so I said, let me mention it, because that is extremely important if we look at the rise in cancer on St. Maarten in the last few years. Something as simple as potassium bromate, which you find in bread, wheat bread, that is sold from the US here, but illegal in the EU. Titanium dioxide, vegetable oil, something like Mountain Dew, something sold all over. So I'd like the minister to actually also put that in the plan and know that a law will come from Parliament side, from MP Duran and myself with that. Then I heard the minister also mention the fishing, which made me happy. We had our session in Sabre, and we got bombarded by the locals, literally crying. And one of the discussions was the fishing, and the minister mentioned that there's no regulation on other islands selling here, but we are stopped, our fishermen on St. Maarten are actually stopped from selling outside. So maybe one of the ideas was, and I threw that at one of the fishermen in Sabre, and he was totally for it, that a license would be able to be requested, that our fishermen could also fish in their waters and they in ours. And if there's a fee attached to it, however it is, it's divided among the islands. But a more collaboration between St. Maarten and our neighboring islands. Then, Mr. Chairman, through you, I heard the whole plan. I heard a lot of ideas. One of the things that I was missing, I heard MP Westcott mention it, was oversight with a plan with time. So if we could, as Parliament, receive a timeline on by this time we will be here, by this time we will be here, then we could also let others know what the country is doing. Then I heard MP Westcott asked a question concerning the DR, knowing that while MP Otley was the Minister of TIAT, we also went to the Dominican Republic on a total different mission, which was the FCCA, but at that same time we took and I organized different meetings with the Dominican Republic, the Minister of Agriculture, the ministry concerning what could be done. And I was happy when I saw that invitation come in. And MP Westcott will be extremely happy when she hears what is possible from Parliament. Because I know it's a lot is possible. And I'm going to give a small example. We visited a marketplace where the little avocado that is sold here for $4.50, $4.75, literally costs 15 to 20 cents. So the collaboration between a place like the Dominican Republic would bring the food prices that are now sky high on St. Maarten a lot lower. Until our own farmers can grow those avocados, I think that is the way to go. So in all, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy and excited about what we're hearing today. And the minister knows that she has support in Parliament to make this happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I look to, I see that MP Veronica Janssen Webster would like the floor. MP Webster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to the Minister and her support staff, and to my colleagues and people listening in. I too am very pleased to see and hear what the Minister is bringing forward today. It's very good for St. Maarten for us to focus on food security, and by doing so, this good focus on agriculture. I took note of the presentation, Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, and I noticed that on the page about projects farmers, there's the land access program, and I was not able to hear exactly how and what would be done. So if you could repeat the land access program for the farmers, because I know of some people in St. Maarten now who are already busy with farming, they're busy with backyard farming, and they're very interested in having access to land. Is this land on St. Maarten or outside? If you could just highlight that again, please, for us. And then regarding the wells, I was pleased to hear about the well study. I would like to remind everyone again of the well in Sakersgut that is presently being annexed by persons. So the community, it's a public well. When I asked this on the floor of Parliament to the Minister of Romy, he did answer and said that he did do the research and found out that it was a public well and that it is right now enclosed, so there's no public access. The wells are very important to farmers. Having come from a farming family, we have used the wells with submersible pumps always to supply our water use. And I think that if farmers have access to the wells with tanks, with submersibles, they will be able to supply themselves with the water that they will need. I also welcome your initiatives, as you mentioned, Sint, Panama, Barbados, and in the future, the Dominican Republic and Colombia. I would like if you could tell us more, Minister, about how and what you will do concretely to take care of the food security via these countries. In particular, Panama, having attended the Paralatino recently, I took note and I went back in my phone just now and looked at pictures that I took of in the supermarket, that the price of a dozen eggs there was $2.13. And I think that when you look at that price and you look at what we pay here for eggs, are there, to your knowledge, any direct shipping routes from Panama to St. Maarten? If we could shift from our imports from the United States only and look at imports from these countries that you are visiting, direct imports, I can see the prices, food for our people going down. And if eggs are sold in the supermarket for $2.13 now in Panama, that is their retail price. Imagine the price directly from the source with the shipping then to St. Maarten, the reasonable prices that we could offer here. So I think the most important part that I picked up was that your ministry is doing something, is looking at the tariffs, is doing something about looking at it. But I wanted to hear more concretely, like what is going to be done with these alternative countries, Sint Kitts, Panama, Barbados, the Dominican Republic, and Colombia in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Janssen Webster, for those questions posed to the Minister. I now look to MP York, MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the SG, Minister, support staff, esteemed colleagues, guests in the Tribune, and our listening public. I would like to first off thank the Minister for making herself available to come today to give the presentation. Before, I have just a quick question for the Minister. Just a head nod would be okay. The basis for the plans and ideas in the presentation, the basis of it derives from the policy, agriculture policy, right? Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. Because I briefly scanned through the agriculture policy, and in the policy, it emphasizes the need for a baseline study to assess the current state of agriculture, fisheries, and livestock on the island. So the question is, has that study been done since? Because in the policy, it mentions some goals like the achieving 5% GDP contribution from agriculture, reducing the 10% imports, etc. At the time, because of the lack of the baseline assessment study, there are goals, but now years removed from those goals being planned or targets, it would more seem speculative now because we don't have the data to how you say to what's the word I'm looking for? To the underlying data to basically kind of justify. Thank you. To justify those numbers. And when I look at the plans today, a lot of plans. Initially, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, great, good ideas. But then, in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned, or the minister mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that the budget this year was cut to basically 60,000. In the policy, it mentioned that you need an estimate number of 1.5 million would be needed just for the restructuring, not even the execution of anything as yet. So for the 1.5 million to be cut back to a mere 60,000, and then I look at the ambitious plans that the minister wants to execute, my question would be, where is that money coming from? Right? Because, for example, the ALF agency, that's for capacity building, policies, etc. That's for all the mandates it will have to be able to execute, that's a whole department, right? So where the question that initially comes to mind is, where is this money coming from? The minister also made mention to possible amendments needed to be made to make these goals attainable. And one of my colleagues, immediately committed to signing on to making these funds available. And he said, this side of the room, I reside on this side of the room. I cannot commit to something if I don't even know it's possible, right? Because my question would be, a budget amendment comes with reallocating funds, right? I can't see myself taking money from education. I can't see myself taking money from justice. I can't see myself taking money from VSI and that nice program that the minister just came out with for the homeless. By saying that, I'm not saying that agriculture is not important. I just don't know where the money is going to be reallocated from. So my question to the minister is, in the upcoming budget, what has her ministry done, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, in order to create additional funds for them to be allocated to agriculture? So what is the ministry currently working on or has done, and that could be implemented and ready to roll whenever either the budget amendment for the budget for 2025 comes back to Parliament, or the one after that, 2026. So are there any revenue generating measures readily available during these budgets, for these budgets, to make the money available to be allocated to these, to agriculture? Quickly looking at my notes. The ALF agency has mandates such as what I'm seeing here, building capacity building, market regulation, food safety, and emergency preparedness. How does the creation of the ALF agency coincide with the existing mandates of the TIAT ministry as it pertains to controls, etc.? Is there any provisions for the possible yellow tape or red tape that would be, that would coincide with the current mandates that are there right now? And the ALF agency, I would be very much interested in a detailed budget for the ALF agency, because for the amount of things that they would have to do, I would like to know how much would this cost. And as it pertains to the plans that the minister nicely alluded to in the presentation, a lot of these plans, a good bit of these plans, if I remember correctly, the minister also presented during the budget debate as well. And I think she briefly touched, to you, Madam Chairman, she briefly touched on where they are currently, but I didn't really get any concrete, maybe I missed it, but I didn't really get any concrete timelines or concrete status on where they are today. So to keep it short and not be long-winded today, I'll leave it at that for my questions for now, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. I now look and see that MP Arian would like the floor. MP Arian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, all my colleagues, the Honorable Minister and her support staff, and the viewing public. Through you, Mr. Chairman, MP Westcott, I believe, started off with the probably the most important topic, which would be the the budget. We've had this presentation today based on agriculture and the agency and so forth, but we've also had this very similar presentation a few months ago when it came to the budget debate, and also in December when it came to the budget debate. I even went over the meetings again from the budget debate, and a lot of these topics already came up. We are now 6 months removed. So what I would want to know is, what has been executed since then? So if you go back and watch the budget debate, a lot of these topics came up already. What has been executed since then? Or are we gonna hear the same topics again coming up in the 2026 budget debate again, and without execution? The minister mentioned, which I agree, that 61,000 guilders is not enough for the agriculture initiatives. And I'm pretty sure the minister is aware that the budget 2025 is coming back, and it's basically a new budget. And where the Minister of Finance mentioned that other items will be put inside there. So is the minister going to have a meeting, advocate, or ensure that there's some type of funding coming into the amended or the new budget 2025 that's supposed to come here in June? We also called for a meeting, our faction called for a meeting, spearheaded by concerns by MP York regarding the tariffs. We haven't gotten an update on this meeting request and when it will be, but I do see today in this presentation the tariffs were lightly addressed. So, but I'm hoping that we're still going to have this meeting. But since we don't have any indication of that, I'll have to ask a couple of questions regarding the tariffs, because the minister mentioned the tariffs and how agriculture and the plan to address the tariffs through agriculture, but we don't have any current data. So what I would want to hear from the minister is, what is the current CPI? What is the current inflation? So when we look at the food industry or agriculture industry, or the foods that you're looking at to mitigate any increase in prices, what are the prices? What are the price increases that we are currently seeing, and how do you offset that with your agricultural plan? In your presentation, you also mentioned about global trade and so forth, but again, we're not going to get anywhere without data because we don't have ASICUDA implemented. So where's the minister going to get this data from to be able to execute all of her plans based on the global trade. Where are we with Asicuda? The whole parliament approved, I believe, a motion when it comes to Asicuda. So where are we with this? The ALF agency, the minister mentioned that, through you, Mr. Chairman, that it's going to be a ZBO, so basically its own entity. What I would like to know is then, is the agriculture section going to be incorporated in this agency, or this ZBO, and be out of the government's as a body, and then the income, the revenues, or the expenses that was related to this section, would that then be taken over by the agency? The plans for the agency, is that currently budgeted, or is that planned to be budgeted in 2026? So in the last budget, it was not budgeted. So in the budget that's coming, will it be budgeted there? The start of this agency, is it budgeted there? Because for the ZBO, is a whole legislative process. So when I look at your plans for the ALF agency, and I don't see any timeline, so I will also request through you, Mr. Chairman, some indication or timelines from the minister on the setting up of this agency up until the point of execution. Because when we look at setting up a ZBO, the average time, and that's still a fast time, would be 18 to 24 months. Dealing with our past history and our legislative process. So 18 to 24 months. So all of these plans that the minister has, and most persons in parliament today said they're so happy and happy for these plans, but the execution of these plans with them are then in 2028, because the agency would not be set up next year and would not be set up in 2027. So what is the timeline by the ministry on having the agency set up? And in the meantime, what is the plan of the ministry? So what plans are you planning to execute out of this policy that until we have the agency, what plans are you planning to execute? I would like to have those two separated. So the agency plans and then the ministry plans. Going back to the budget, this question was posed to the Minister of Finance, and she lightly, with a head nod, gave an indication of the correct path, or that the question was on point. But I'll ask you as the Minister of TIAD, in the budget 2025, weren't we already supposed to see revenues coming in for agriculture? Was there an advice written by the ministry based on this revenue that was supposed to come in, but then could not be executed because the revenue was not put into the budget? It was not budgeted for. So I'd like confirmation on this. Again, we're already supposed to get money from TWO for agriculture. Advices were written, but because it was never put into the budget, it cannot be executed. What is this advice? What was it concerning? How much was the amount? And was the money actually coming from TWO? Regarding TWO and the agency, the minister mentioned that you will be seeking funding or support from TWO to set up this agency. So does that mean if the TWO does not see themselves in your vision that we won't have an agency? Why aren't we? Because a lot of, there are a few individuals who are very critical, that sit here today in Parliament, very critical of the TWO and dealing with Dutch in certain manners. So why aren't we looking for our own funding to be able to set up this agency? If we feel that this agency is that important, why are we depending on the TWO to be able to set it up? And why we don't just budget it? Budget it and let's just get it executed. The minister also mentioned that the backyard farming has seen an increase, but I would like to have that clarified, because the last data that was shown was that the backyard farming, the peak of the backyard farming was 2020, 2021, and started weighing off in 2022. So can we get confirmation if we're seeing the peak of the backyard farming now, or the peak of the backyard farming was in 2021 and weighed off in 2022. And then the same topics of MP Sarah Oscar Williams and the whole Parliament on our position on dealing with the monkeys, iguanas, and the other pests, there's raccoons now, etc. A topic that was brought up already 6 months ago. We can't sit here and talk about agriculture without dealing with the pest situation. Similar budget debate, we had a whole discussion about the wells on St. Maarten. I myself brought the topic up and even said we're going to be going into a hurricane season. And that was 6 months ago. And said, hey, can we now identify the wells, clean them up if we have to, and have them ready, and also do an educational program for the population so they know where and how to access these wells. We're a few weeks away from the hurricane season, and this still hasn't been done. So can that be done? It will be done. The answer was posted then Tiad and Vrami. And the Minister of Vrami then did reply and say, hey, yes, we are looking into it, and we'll start that process. When we we've seen a few complaints on social media, etc., regarding the tariffs and the fact that stores are increasing their prices on old stock. Is there any controls being done to verify this? Where can individuals go to complain if they see any sort of price gouging? What website, what phone number, who can they contact for this? Is the government or the ministry looking at any sort of indexation or indexing of any social support programs, minimum wage, pensions, any welfare assistance that we currently get based on the inflation trends? Can the minister outline how imported inflation, so food, fuel, etc., is impacting the local prices, in particular the essential goods or any goods that fall under the agricultural program? Has the Inspectorate of Economic Affairs increased any inspections of enforcement activities due to any price gouging complaints? And does the department have the tools necessary that they need to be able to execute their duties on a daily basis? So does the department have the tools that they need to be able to execute their tasks? So, and just basic tools, computers, pens. Does the department have the basic tools to be able to execute these things? Mr. Chairman, again, we had a very good presentation today, a very nice presentation, but what I see is a trend since the budget debate is, yes, we're having good presentations, but what we don't have is the execution of these presentations. And as I said, we're 6 months removed from the last budget debate where most of these are brought up. If you look at the current budget, there's no money. The minister is mentioning that she wants the support of Parliament to be able to ensure that there is a budget for the agricultural system, agricultural plans. The minister has got the support from the members of Parliament, but what I would like to see is that the government actually presents a budget with the funds inside of there. So not that we have to come in Parliament and amend anything, because the last time we amended things in Parliament, we ended up with a budget that was 4 months late. So I'm very wary of making any amendments from our side, but the Parliament has but the government itself has the opportunity to put inside this. I'm hoping that in the next 6 weeks, when the budget 2025 comes here, we don't just see other passion projects inside there, but we actually see an increase in the agricultural budget for not just the ministry, but for St. Maarten. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Arian. I now look and see that MP Weaver would like the floor. MP Weaver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to Griffier, Honorable Minister, support staff, my honorable MPs, and those listening and viewing via whichever media. First of all, thank you, Minister, for the presentation. I think a lot of questions were asked today, and I think, you know, thinking back on it and listening to the presentation, and having been to Parlatino as well, and sitting inside of the committee, and where the agenda point was strengthening food security in Latin America and the Caribbean, a lot of what I'm hearing in this presentation also was said there as well. So it shows that not just because we're a small island within the Caribbean, even the bigger countries within Latin America are facing the same situations, where they are also looking to partner up with different countries that are close to them to initiate the food security, much as what we're trying to do here today as well, and the topic where we're looking to see how we can cooperate with the neighboring islands, such as Saba, Anguilla, and so forth. So it shows too on a larger scale that, you know, everyone within this, within the global society is facing the same situations, and they're looking at different means to be able to tackle this issue. So I concur with a lot of the MPs today when they said that we need to partner up with the different islands, neighboring islands, and ensure that we work together. So a question is there enough produce around on Sint Maarten? And I think too, I think MP La Cruz mentioned it as well. We need to focus on what do we want to produce on Sint Maarten, right? Because if everyone is looking at farming different produce, will we have enough to be able to then go to the other neighboring islands to then make a trade or to be able to make it even feasible? So it's much like in the past when we had the salt pans and we were basically producing salt for the neighboring islands, but we had enough to go around, right? What is the vision of the local farmers? Has there been a meeting with them as well as to, okay, what is our strategy? How do we want to tackle this to make it feasible for us? You know, because if we all come together and say, okay, we want to, for example, say, produce lettuce, then that is what we will be known for. And then we will have enough to not only supply St. Maarten, but maybe supply the neighboring islands as well. And then on another note, I'm happy that some of the supermarkets are starting to put some of the local produce on their shelves as well. But I would like to know from the ministry's perspective, were meetings held with the owners of the local supermarkets and what are their feedback? Because I think it's important as well, not just for us to have a policy, but also to have the buy-in of our local supermarkets as well. And how do they see this? You know, because if we want to say, okay, we want to go to the Dominican Republic, we want to have their produce here, what is the vision of the supermarket owners? You know, because if they have a different mindset as to what they're already, the business relationships they already have, you know, with different countries, how will that affect us and with the policy as well? So I think it's, everyone needs to be on board and there needs to be a total buy-in from everyone. So on that note, I want to just thank the minister and the ministry for the work they've done thus far, and we look to have further discussions and to see this actually happen in the near future. Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Thank you, MP Weaver. I now look and see that MP Roseberg would like the floor. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Blessed day to the griffier, to the Ministry of TEAT, my colleagues here present today, the public listening and viewing online. I also agree that it was an insightful presentation. My colleagues asked a lot of valuable questions. I had a few other questions that I would like to add. What's the reason that a ZBO structure was chosen? I also understood from my colleague MP Arian, he mentioned that there's a specific timeline in regards to setting up the agency that was mentioned. I'm not sure of the timeline that he mentioned. Was this looked into, if that timeline is indeed the timeline that MP Arian is referring to? And based on the presentation, did the process already started for setting up the agency? Because my colleague mentioned that it would take, if I understood correctly, 18 months, 18 to 24 months. But if the procedure was already started, then it will not be the exact timeline as mentioned. So I would like to get more information in regards to that. I also saw that indeed the budget was cut, but what is the current, seeing the amount of ideas based on the presentation, what is the current priority list with the current budget available, and with what timeline connected to it? I was very happy to see that the agriculture program in the schools is being executed. I missed how that is being funded. I know it was set, but I can't remember if it was through a grant or not, and how long that project is for. Also, I understood that a few schools have joined that project. Will other schools be joining as well? And is there currently any pending funding available or being looked into so that that can continue? I looked up certain possibilities for funding. I saw possibility with collaboration, for example, with the Friendside schools, Green Up program, if I'm not mistaken, and other partnership options that might be available. So is the ministry looking into those options? And then especially also on European level, I'm mentioning that because if there's funding available that Sint Maarten can benefit from, I do believe we need to make use of those funding options. And I can remember when participating in IPCO that it was mentioned that also on European level, seeing that the technical assistance often is where the projects or the funding options get stuck, that the European Union, that they are willing to assist in that. So I'm asking through you, Chairman, if that is being looked into, because it's a fact, money is needed, but I also believe that if there is funding available that we can get through grants, we need to make use of it. And if the technical assistance is missing to be able to write those projects, we need to look into the options of making sure that we get that technical assistance so that we can get the funding that we are entitled to. Those are my questions for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Roseberg, for those questions posed to the minister. I now look and see MP Arian is requesting the floor. MP Arian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A businessman who was tuned in asked me to check the Department of Statistics website. Actually, he asked me what the website was, and I incorrectly told him stat.sx. I knew that was the website in the past, but that doesn't seem to be working. And the one that I did find was opendata.stmartin.gov.org. So I'd like to ask the minister, which website is the official website for the Statistics Department? And when last has either one of these websites been updated? Because when you look at the website, there's no information about GDP, there's no information about anything relevant to our current economy or even past economy of the last few months. The CPI data is not clear, there's nothing about GDP, so the business community cannot get any information which they rely on from our government based on the website not being up to date. So when last has the website been up to date? When will it be up to date? And what is the correct website? Regarding the business case the minister mentioned, is it possible, the minister mentioned the business case was done. Is it possible to have Parliament get a copy of the business case from the ALV agency? And lastly, Well, last two questions. What short-term or long-term strategies are being implemented to manage the rising prices and to mitigate any impact on low and middle-income households? And again, because the website is down or not up to date, what are the main contributors to the current inflation rate on St. Maarten? How much is it? And how have these changed over the past 12 months? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Arian, for those questions. I now see MP York would like the floor. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Minister, I didn't mention a couple of things that came to mind later on. Plan for natural disasters measures. I didn't get that out of the presentation, and I didn't really see anything really mentioned about it in the policy. Maybe I missed it. Are there any measures or resilience plans as it pertains to natural disasters in any of the plans explained earlier? Next question would be the Minister Chairman also, I wouldn't say pleaded, but she made a case that more money is needed for agriculture. And in the presentation outlined a lot of plans and ideas to realize agricultural life on St. Maarten. My question would be, okay, the plans are great, but what kind of funds will be needed or would be needed to realize these things? Because if we're saying we need more money and we should allocate more money, we need to start by knowing what amount is needed. In the policy, didn't outline any, it said 1.5 million to restructure, but I don't think 1.5 million does all those plans that the minister outlined in her presentation. So I think there's a gap missing somewhere there, and if the minister could elaborate on that, I'll appreciate it. Consumer protection laws, I don't know if that's something that falls under the ALF, is ALF, or not, but can the minister elaborate on that? And then lastly, in the policy acknowledges the scarcity of land and the need for a land use policy. But it lacks the specifics on how land will be allocated for agriculture. When you look at competing demands such as land for tourism, land for development, housing, or even zoning regulations. So how, I guess that's something cross-ministerial, how is the allocation of land for agriculture going to be done in considering the competing demands as well in the other sectors, and as well the ongoing zoning regulations, or at least the plans for zoning regulations of the Vromi minister. And I'll submit my other questions in writing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, MP York. I now give the floor to MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, two things. One is, and I don't know if the minister is aware of this, so I'm going to say it, and I think Mr. Frederick is. There is, from one of the farmers, he did some recruiting, and there's about 7 or 8 families that were willing to provide land for agriculture at a very small, low rate. So that is one. And while in TIAT, we also spoke to a specific business owner that got land from government, got a lot of land from government, and is not using the land, but also found himself in some trouble paying for the land, while the idea was to take back that land and allocate it for agriculture. And it's a lot of land. Water is very much to be found also on that property. without mentioning the name of the location or the business. If the minister likes, I'll let her know that after, but continuation on that would also be useful. And then I wouldn't say a mistake, I made an assumption a while ago concerning the budget and changes to the budget. So I'd like to take that back and say this. For me personally, MP La Cruz, it is extremely important that our people are fed properly and cheaper than we are doing right now. 2 plastic bags is $100 in the supermarket, and that is crazy. So I personally do not care where the money comes from and where it needs to be cut, but this is something that needs to happen as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I now look and see that there are no more MPs requesting the floor. I have a few comments myself. I would like to thank the minister for her presentation once again. And I know there have been some discussions about plans being very ambitious. And I always like to say that you have to start with the end in mind. And you set your goal, you set your target, and then we work our ways back. Of course, we know that there are monetary constraints, but I believe that those are good problems to have. We just need to work together on the side of government, on the side of parliament to solve those problems. There's a quote that I always like to remind myself and say, that there are 3 types of people in this world. There are those that make things happen, there are those that watch things happen, and there are those who sit back and say, what the heck just happened? And I believe that here in Parliament, as well on the side of government, we are making things happen. And this is especially important to, I would say, our local entrepreneurs, our local people. This is a new industry that is being formed. There will be some challenges, but there is also a great upside. A lot of times in life, there are opportunities. Opportunities lie in areas where you may not see yourself in, but you have to realize that this is an opportunity. It's best you get in on the fast movers advantage, as they say in business. If you get in after 2030, when everything is up and running, you'll have less of a profitability as if you're getting now. So I encourage everybody to do their research. Those who are interested in agriculture, fisheries, animal husbandries. The minister alluded to Q Credits, that they're a microfinancing company. They have provided a program to assist local entrepreneurs in this field. They made mention of training programs that are coming. I will encourage the ministry also to provide marketing material to the public to show the different options that exist within the industry. It's not all about just if you're a fisherman going to catch fish. It's just not always about going planting yourself. There are a lot of spin-off businesses that could come out of this big industry. There's shipping, there's logistics, there's marketing. So I would just encourage the population, especially the youth, the young entrepreneurs, to take advantage of this budding industry and reach out to your members of parliament and reach out to also the ministry. With that being said, I would like to adjourn this meeting very briefly for 5 minutes to see how the minister would like to proceed with the answering of the questions and return. All right, meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Good afternoon once again, the people of St. Maarten. After caucusing with the minister who was able to provide the answers now, but we have decided to adjourn for later on in this week. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunications, Ms. Grisha Heiliger-Martin, and her support staff for her presence here today and for providing the necessary information. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby adjourn this meeting until further notice. Thank you. Adjourned. Meeting adjourned.